Artisan contractors are identified as specializing in one or two types of artisan trades, usually less than 5. And some of those trades can include painting, drywall, plumbing, flooring, and so on. The majority of the work performed will be by the owner and or the owner's direct employees. And subcontracted costs are typically less than 40 to 50% of their total operation. Artisan contractors may be engaged in commercial, industrial, and residential new construction and remodeling work. Here's some important underwriting criteria for the artisan contractors, and it'll look very similar to the general contractors as well. So as I mentioned, they can be engaged in commercial or residential construction, which can be new construction or remodeling services. The rating for these types of risks are based on payroll and subcontractors' costs. New ventures can be entertained, but it's typically preferred that the contractors also have work-related experience if they are a new venture. Risks with no prior coverage or lapse in coverage are available, but there may be additional requirements depending on the carrier, such as a loss history report, lost runs, or a signed no known loss letter. And then there are exceptions on underwriting criteria and qualifications, and that will vary state to state and by carrier. Here, let's take a look at some of the coverages that are available on the artisan contractors. So we have limits up to the $1 million per occurrence, $2 million aggregate. There's also umbrella coverage available. And as we mentioned earlier, it is rated on that payroll basis and subcontracting costs. Some forms that are available for these risks include blanket additional insured and forms with primary and non-contributing wording, waiver of subrogation, and completed operations and endorsement, and also designated construction project general aggregate can be used with artisans. Some information about licensed and unlicensed artisan contractors. So it's really important to understand the licensing requirements for them. There are some classifications that may or may not require the C contractor's license, so there's A, B, and C, and this is all going to vary amongst the state and the carrier. It'll also matter whether or not the classification provides services rather than construction work. Some good examples of unlicensed artisan contractors will look like businesses that do janitorial work, that mow and blow, pool cleaners, maintenance work, and it's really important to understand exactly what type of work your risk is performing, and that will help you to write it and place the proper coverage. So I highly recommend taking a look at their websites. That'll usually tell you what they do. I know some of them may not have one, but it's always really important to try to search for them and see what they do. You know, in my line of work, you know, when I visit a website, I'll see a risk come over and it'll be for like a landscaping guy or a maintenance risk, and that was just all that was on the app. But sometimes if I visit their website, I'll see that they also do snow removal. And music in particular, and maybe some other carriers, we actually exclude that. Or with other carriers that need to be rated separately. So it's really important to know what exactly is the type of work that they're doing, and that we appropriately rate for that. The other kind of major category is the general contractors. So general contractors typically have that administrative and managerial responsibility for the construction projects, and they have more control over the operations. Contractors they can directly perform some of the construction work, or they delegate construction work through their subcontractors. They also, just like an artisan contractor, will be engaged in commercial, industrial, and residential new construction or remodeling work. So a little bit different from the artisan contractor, at least 40% or more of the operations would be subcontracted out, which was a little bit different than what we listed for the artisans. And it's typically required that they construct 12 or fewer new single-family residences per year or at any one project site. And keep in mind that a duplex is equivalent to 2 single-family residences. And then new construction of condominiums and townhomes is prohibited, and many carriers will also not allow new tract home work. And also a little bit different from artisan contractors is that the general contractor is rated on sales and then that subcontractor cost as well. So the size on these coverages available for the general contractor is very similar to that of the artisan contractor. so feel free to take a look at it again. But here's just a really great time for me to point out a reminder on how, again, it's important to understand some of the forms available to you. So having a written contract can be extremely helpful and is oftentimes required by the carrier for certain types of coverages and forms that you may want to place with these types of businesses. And also, it's really important to have the proper coverages and risk transfers in place with your contractor's risks so that the insured is successful and is protected in the event of a claim. So here's another look at some of the other coverages available. So in writing contractors, you have a variety of options available to you that could be added to the risk. One of them is contractor's equipment, which can cover theft. It provides around $1 million total insured values and $250,000 for any one item. You also have $50,000 available to you for miscellaneous tools and equipment, and then $250,000 for equipment that is rented or borrowed. And then on the right side, an explanation of the inland marine installation coverage. So this is important to consider when covering machinery and equipment for the interest of the owner, seller, or contractor during the course of installation, renovation, or repair. And $500,000 is available at any one job site with this coverage, and $125,000 at any location other than the job site. And when placing this coverage, it's important to make sure that you've confirmed with the insurer that the job site should be fenced, it's protected from nuisance and theft, there's really good lighting, and possibly even a security guard on premise. Some other important things to remember when writing contractors' risks include just knowing that the contractor's risks are auditable. So if the payroll, sales, or subcontractors costs come back significantly different than what was on the original submission, action can be taken by the carrier. And that can kind of sometimes be a surprise for the insured. So, during that discovery phase when we're having that discussion, it's really important to nail down, again, what exactly it is that they do. Do they use subcontractors, payroll, sales, and then the subcontractors' costs and that sort of thing. And another important thing to remember about contractors' work is poor workmanship is not insurable. The contractor is responsible for the repair of their poor workmanship. However, the resulting damage is covered for the bodily injury and property damage.
And Andrea, I just wanted to mention something. There is a professional liability coverage out there that can close that gap. So those brokers that, are participating today, it's important for them to be able to communicate that exclusion and the need for potentially an additional policy.
Absolutely. Really good point to make.
And one other thing I want to chime in on regarding the subcontracted work, it's important to get a certificate of insurance from your subcontractor. If they are not insured, they need to be included under your payroll. I know they're not an actual employee of yours, but since they are not insured, it is important that they do get added to the payroll. That is the correct way to rate for the policy. Otherwise, when it comes to audit time, there's going to be a lot more money due.
Absolutely, that is a really good point there. And again, just with talking about risk transfer, it is really important for the subcontractors to also have that insurance in place. So some other important tips that I can give you in writing contractors include just asking the prospective insured the right questions to really understand their business and type of work. It's a really good idea to visit their website if they have one and talk to them about previous jobs that they've done. Other websites are available to you to kind of figure out if this is going to be a good risk for you or not. Are they a good contractor? So you can visit buildzoom.com for permit history and contractor rating, and these are public websites. And then websites like the OSHA website will provide any violations that they might have. And then another really good point that's extremely important in all areas is just to ensure that the accord forms and supplemental applications are completely filled out. And they do ask those questions about the subcontractors and is insurance in place, hold harmless in place, and so on and so forth. And that'll help you to identify if they need to be listed as a subcontractor or as an employee. Just having those accord forms and supplemental apps completely filled out will help prevent any gaps in coverage for the insured. And it also prevents any barriers to closing the business, since the carrier wouldn't have to come back to the agents to ask for additional information. So there is a few other coverages that are available that go along with this risk, and I'll let Anae chime in to kind of talk about. I know she mentioned professional liability.
Yeah, the professional liability can you can get policies out there that will cover that the poor workmanship, the cost to redo the work. That's a lot of the claims end up being that type of loss. So, and then pollution liability can be either written as a standalone or included on a professional liability policy. And then you have some trades that are really environmental sensitive. So that's another area to consider when you are looking at contractors. And cyber liability is an exposure that contractors do have, and they have employees, so employment practices liability needs to be considered. So, don't forget to make sure that they have all the coverages they need. And most important is to talk to the, as Andrea said, talk to the insured about what their exposure really is. What are they doing?